I'm going to walk you through a few things about AI and machine learning. Honestly, I think the previous session about the challenge that a CISO is facing, and then the new norm that John is talking about is actually very, very relevant to my session, right? You know, he's talking about the magics the CISO need to play. Hopefully I'm going to give you a few more magics that you get to play. But the more important thing is actually when John and Thomas talk about the changing the environment, the new norm. I think at the end of the day, John mentioned one thing I think resonated with me very well. It's about the new threats, right? As a CISO or as a security practitioners, do we know the new numeric form of the new threat? So I'm going to touch upon that in my talk. So I run the machine learning and AI at Zscaler. The polling question is just about that, right? So it's not just the data science my team is doing, but also we work with all the domain experts within Zscaler team. And for that, we accumulated more than a decade worth of the how to do security, how to do cloud security, right? So that's our unique strength. And then the massive amount of data. Every single day, 150 billion transactions. We are blocking more than 100 million threats. And we are doing along the line of 175,000 updates a day. So that's a massive amount of the data we are actually gathering, we are pushing to the cloud, we are getting from the cloud. All three of them together made a Zscaler AI very unique place so that we innovate and we can give you, we allow you to do magic to John's point. So I show you a few tricks you may be able to play. But one question is, it's just like what Thomas was talking about. Hey, don't buy the buzzword, right? Don't buy zero trust, buy the use cases. What's the use case we are doing? Like, why are we even talking about AI? Why are we talking about zero trust? Fundamentally, it's because of the evolving security landscape. The dynamic things coming to the picture. John was talking about, hey, before his team, just to download things from Microsoft websites. We don't necessarily check the hash, but maybe we should now. I would go even a step further. Sometimes checking the hash may not be enough because things change so fast, right? So things are changing very fast. Same thing on the security landscape. If you think about in the last 20, 30 years, the industry has been doing one thing much, much better than before, which is blocking the known threats in a very scalable, fast way. Like Zscaler, 150 data centers, no matter where you go, we have the distributed policy, we can block any of the known threats, fast, scalable, no problem. At the same time, as an industry, we are going to see more and more unknown threats. In the panel discussion, we talked about the SolarWinds incident at the beginning, right? So that's one form of the unknown threats. So 9 months ago, there was already some breach. There was already data leakage, but people didn't know about it, right? And there is no signature or no hash or no nothing to say, hey, this is the threat. Now, of course, now we know this is a threat now, but how do we predict and then classify and then discover and then block those unknown threats? That's a tough one. That's where AI and the machine learning comes into the picture. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to actually give you 3 concrete examples for this. One is actually the malware, or a lot of people would run into malware in the form of ransomware. That's kind of a form of the malware. Another thing is actually a domain. What is that? It may be a TCP/IP connection or whatnot. So that's kind of a threat vector in a way. And then last but not least, the humans, right? You can have employees, maybe, a compromised employee or a disgruntled employee or whatnot. So I'm just to give you 3 concrete examples that how we can use AI to address some of those unknown threats. So first, it's about an example is a file-based attack. Malware, ransomware would be pretty typical examples. Zscaler actually has been doing malware detection for many years, obviously, and we innovated the Cloud Sandbox a few years ago, and then so far the Cloud Sandbox is one of the most popular, advanced sandbox is one of the most popular features people actually use and enabled in when they started after they started adopting Zscaler. And one of the cool features is quarantine. So by quarantine, we meant, hey, you download the file, we actually let a sandbox run it and then tell you, hey, this is clean or not before you get access to it. It's actually very good because of our inline proxy architecture. We can do that. But some of the customers says, well, I like it, except sometimes I don't know what files to quarantine. Do I quarantine nothing or do I quarantine everything? If I quarantine nothing, I don't get to benefit from it. But if I quarantine everything, then my user experience of my team may suffer, right? Because some of them may not want to wait for a minute or 2 or 3. So what do I do? So this is where actually AI machine learning comes into the picture, where we actually use AI model to tell you, hey, do you really need the quarantine or not? So we instead of humans making the policy decisions, hey, Microsoft Word document need a quarantine or a quarantine files from this group needs quarantine. I mean, it's more dynamic now. So in the panel discussion, we talked about the changing, one of the changing factors for CISO is we need to be at a business speed, right? So this is the same thing. How can you make those decisions at a business speed? So AI actually can help you to make those quarantine decisions dynamically. So I give you one example from the result from this pre-filtering model, the AI pre-filtering model to do file quarantine. This is actually a lab study we did 2 years ago with a Fortune 500 companies. For a period of time, all of the 5,700 files passing through our network. And the AI model was able to give instantaneous classification that, hey, this is actually, you went through my smart quarantine, but I give you instantaneous classification that this is actually good. So just go. And then only for small single digit number of files, we actually do hold, and then we actually do double check before we pass it along. So what's the net? The net is actually majority of the user, their user experience is blazingly fast. And a small number of suspicious files need a double check before they actually get a file. So it's actually better of the both, right? You get a good experience, business, the user experience, as well as security at the same time. So that's kind of an innovation, or that's kind of enabled because of the AI. In the panel discussion, John and Thomas was talking about security used to be a no man, right? Now we wanted to enable the business fast. This is one example of the innovation that Zscaler is doing by enable the business fast, leveraging the AI technology. So that's file-based threat. That's one example. The second example I'm going to give to you is actually the domain-based. So what is that, right? So imagine you have the SolarWinds attack, like attack, and then people didn't detect it, and then we actually wanted to use whether IP address or domain name xyz.com to see, is that a good domain or not? It's brand new, but we don't know whether it's kind of a domain that people use to leak information out or use that domain to download the malicious things, right? We don't know. The unfortunate thing for CISO or for the security industry is it's actually getting harder and harder to detect that. Why is that? Because 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we have a list of the bad domains, right? It's known bad. So we just compare, is that a known bad? Then let me block it. But now it's getting, I create a new, every single day there are like 1 million new domains out there. And how am I going to know this is good and bad? And it may be a dormant or things are changing. So you have to read things very a lot of the context around it. But that's a very, very resourceful intensive thing. So how can you actually leverage machine learning to quickly scan through the domains and say, hey, let me pre-filter out some of the domains. So this is actually something we did by leveraging the AI machine learning. We passed through this number of the domains. This is the new domains, and then we just pass through the AI. The goal is actually all the suspicious or the potentially bad ones will fall into here on the left-hand side, a small percentage, less than 5%. And then from there, we can afford to do more resource-intensive study on what's going on, right? And we actually had a win here. The win is we actually use test cases of all of the 12 SolarWinds breach domains, along with thousands and thousands of other domains, good and bad. And we actually see that all of those SolarWinds breach domains were sort of falling to that pre-filtered out domains. So that's just step number one. So your question is, okay, so what, right? So once you actually have a much smaller data set or a smaller domains, then you can do very resourceful, resource intensive, deeper AI analysis from here. Now, what kind of things are we going to look at it? We are going to look at the lexical part of the domains, right? Is that a typo scoring? Is that a DGA domains? Or we are going to look at how this domain is actually getting referred dynamically and statically, right? And then another thing is Zscaler. This is where Zscaler is going to have a lot of that advantage in detecting the unknown threats, which is we actually know the popularity of this domain or this connection or this IP address because we are seeing thousands of companies and millions of users every single day, right? So for instance, if one domain, it's only used by one user of one company, of course, the implication is very, very different from when thousands of users from thousands of companies are accessing that domains in the day, right? Because then we know that, hey, this is popular or not, to what degree. So because of the cloud view, so we actually can leverage that information, build that into our AI model. And then of course, there are gazillion other things we are going to leverage, including the whois or the SCN reputation. That's the usual stuff that a lot of times the security people would leverage. So everything put together, we do a deeper analysis. And then this is just one example that we actually use machine learning. We actually uncover, and then we started blocking this malicious site. Before we uncover it, it's an unknown threat. Now, of course, once we add it to our database, it's now known since February. So hopefully I give you the second example, how we are leveraging AI machine learning to first do some pre-filtering so that it make the problem smaller and then manageable. And secondly, use AI, extensive AI model to actually detect and then discover the unknown threats out there for botnet. That's one example. So last but not least, it's kind of humans can be a threat too, right? As I mentioned, it could be compromised employees, disgruntled employees. The employees may do very well for the last 3 years, but things are always changing, right? And as John and Thomas kept talking about in their panel discussion, things are changing, right? The new norm the change is the new norm, so including humans. So here's one example, right? What is impossible travel? By definition, it's like people logging from different locations within such a short period of time, right? And then we can call it out, hey, something is wrong. Now, your next question is, hey, is that easy or is that too difficult? Because I know what's spinning your mind, right? Okay, well, what about it? What's a VPN? What if these people are just using VPN? How can you tell this is just because of that policy? That alone is not enough. Another thing is, well, for some developers, they have to do this kind of things, magic all the time because of the business need. But for a business sales person, that's sort of a you don't do that kind of thing. So yes, those are actually the complexity of it. The complexity comes to it's actually there's no size, even though the concept is simple, but there's no one size fits all kind of policies. It's almost like every person's impossible travel threshold is different, right? Because it depends on your behavior, your past behavior, your peers' behavior, right? Time of the day. So it's a very personalized. So the rules are very complex. So here's the rule of thumb. When the rules are very complex, AI potentially can come to rescue. So this is exactly what Zscaler is doing, and then we're innovating. So hopefully I kind of summarized the three things. I talked about three things with you, right? So the one is the malware that we actually leverage AI to actually do a very smart quarantine so that you don't have to struggle between, hey, do I quarantine or not? Just let the AI model tell you whether you need a quarantine or not. Actually, you enjoy the security benefit and the user experience. The domain, the unknown domains that could be very dangerous. We use AI technology to do from pre-filtering to the detection. And the same thing with the human behavior, right? So with that, if you think about it, there are really three things that's fairly unique that my team at Zscaler is kind of looking at it, right? One is we enjoy such a big set of data, thousands of customers, 25% of the global 2000 companies, they are trusting Zscaler security cloud. And from there, we actually have the networking. There's a networking effect here. And then we have the cloud view. Because of the cloud view, it helps us tremendously in detecting the unknown threats. I give you an example of the unknown, we call it the command and the control channel, or the domain detection. And the second thing is the user experience. We don't want to compromise, right? Just like John and Thomas kept talking about, no matter what security things we are doing, ultimately we want to serve the business, right? The user experiences are super important. And the last but not least, I also mentioned it to you that a lot of times the AI is needed or come to rescue because the rules otherwise would be too complex. Here's one example. A lot of us read Google News or Apple News, right? But it turned out that your Google News is different from mine. Your Apple News is different from mine. Your Google search result is different from mine. Why is that? Because of the AI engine behind it, it's all contextual. It's a very contextual, very personalized. This is actually the future of the AI and the machine learning, the security industry with AI machine learning. We will have more personalized, contextual, dynamic policies thanks to the AI. So with that, I'm going to pass the stage back to our EVP of the customer experience and the transformation, Kavita.